So now
Soon
we're
enough, right?
huh?
Soon enough.
Exactly. So it is exactly 9 o'clock on the dot. So good morning and welcome to the Happy Huddle, which is where we show up every Friday morning from 9 a.m. to 9:30 to talk about happiness, and positive psychology tools and conscious parenting and self-improvement and development and inspiration and motivation. We don't ever know what we're going to come out with. But today I'm super excited to introduce to you my very good friend, Heather. Wait, I'm trying to find her in the book. Here we are. Whoops, that wasn't your page. You'd think I'd be Heather Kerr right there. There she is, published in this book with me, the Ignite Your Life for Women, as you all know. I'm in this compilation book with a whole bunch of other super incredibly rock star women. And Heather, I met in January at a speakers academy. And so we thought we would just talk about her Ignite moment and conscious living and conscious parenting, because there are so many of us on this imperfect road to perfection, which of course we don't believe in. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Stacy. Great to be on here.
Yeah,
And I love any discussion about not being perfect.
yeah, right?
Right, because I spent so many years trying to be perfect, right? And it took me till I was in my 50s until I realized it wasn't the thing to do.
I totally had an epiphany last night as I was falling asleep. I think I was meditating and I was thinking about the prefrontal cortex of my children and how, it doesn't really fully grow until 25. And I thought, I don't think it really fully develops until you're 50.
Yeah.
Because at 50 is when you stop worrying what everybody else is going to think. You kind of start thinking about what will bring you joy, who you are, what's important. And so I don't really think, or maybe it's, sort of that last tiny little bit of the prefrontal cortex, but that is my new theory for the scientists to research.
Okay, I'll run with that.
Okay.
It's definitely true. It took me a really long time to start questioning just fundamental beliefs.
So your story is so like so many others. Like I think what your story is just will resonate with so many women and men who choose to sort of dive deep into this and search themselves and sort of maybe feminine part of themselves. But your story is so typical of many people. So will you give us a little bit, don't give us all the juicy details because people are going to want to buy the book, which they can buy at Amazon, and all the proceeds go to charity. But please tell us a little bit about your journey to personal development.
So when I was a little girl, I had an experience with a grade school teacher who was critical of my stuff. And, I don't even think she intended to be critical. And I think adults really need to watch, like, just the smallest comments can change the course of a life. But she said something about my artwork that made me feel like I wasn't good enough, that my artwork wasn't good enough. And it really crushed me in a really deep way. And from that moment on, I labeled myself as not artistic. And I think it kind of goes back to this trying to please adults when we're kids, like looking up to people and looking to them for approval. And I was always, right from a really early age, I suffered from real anxiety. Like, I was such an anxious kid, like so anxious. Like when I was 5, I got tested because they thought I might have stomach cancer because I had stomach aches all the time, and it was from anxiety. So I was always trying to please the adults. So I don't know, somehow I got the message, that I needed to always be something else. And I think that was the point in my life where I stopped looking at myself, or kind of believing in that childlike wonder that I could do the stuff that I loved and that it was going to be okay.
And so I
And
want to pause for a second because this is so, so important. You're a sensitive child. Now, first of all, because a lot of parents are listening to this who are thinking, okay, I don't want to crush my child. So what do you think? Do you think your parents were aware that you were a sensitive child? And I'm
You
not
know,
trying to blame your parents. I'm just looking for context.
I think my mother was kind of absent for some reasons, and my father, like they were both Depression era kids, and their focus wasn't on psychology.
It was
It was
survival.
it was on survival and financial security. And the lesson started when I was 2. It
So,
was spare the rod, spoil the child kind of thing.
yeah,
So it was just, I believe that they had love in their hearts and wanted me to be safe and wanted me to survive.
that is so interesting because there's a lot of conversation about how, after the wars in this generation, we have, and in this first world country, we have the luxury of thinking about happiness and thinking about, because we aren't trying to survive the whole time and we're not looking for food and shelter. And yet there's also sort of a disservice of not having challenges to overcome to create grit. So there's always this balance. But it's interesting because I'm always looking back into our childhood, because if I can find moments where we can do differently as parents, what would it be? So I think that that's super important, is this just being aware of your children, because now in this day and age where we may not be trying to just survive and know our
Yeah.
finances, we're so busy. We're so
Yeah. Well, this is something that really bothers me when I see parents, because like my parents were prescriptive with me and they wanted me to be financially safe. What I see, and my kids are in their early 20s, and so what I see so much is parents trying to overschedule everything, and it's like we have our own agenda for our children. We want them to be like the little Renaissance people,
yeah.
like the athlete and the artist and this and that. We're going to give them all the chances. But what I believe is that our true selves, our creative selves, which is, I don't just mean being an artist, I mean, which is what I happen to do, but like anything that we want to do that puts us in flow, that comes from a place of spaciousness. And if you don't allow your kids that time
Space.
to just amuse themselves, go figure it out, unstructured playtime, they lose that connection to themselves. And I believe then they start trying to please everybody, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying to please them in a different way. And again, we're all well-intentioned. We're
Yeah.
trying to offer our kids, so we didn't get a lot of opportunities to try all these fun things. And so now we want to offer all of it to the kids.
Yeah.
But we develop expectations, of them, that
Yeah.
almost like they're going to be like little Renaissance people, as I said, they're going to be the master of everything, and they're going to have joyful lives, and they're going to, and we're all human, right?
Yeah.
Being human is messy, and it's just, we need to give our kids space.
It's so true. And it's so hard to do that. And especially when they start saying they're bored. And I love it now because I heard something from the mediatrician, who's a doctor who works with kids who have addictions to media and electronics. And he said, it's okay when you're bored, because that ignites a part of your brain that begins to work to figure out how to not be bored. And so that's what I just tell my kids when they're bored. I'm like, that is so awesome. You are now working on a new part of your brain. Let me know when that works for you. And so, okay, I want to go back to your story, but again, it was really important because as I read your story and I was thinking about this really critical moment where a teacher, and how old were you?
I was in grade 5.
Okay, so in 5th grade, how old were you about that time?
So around 11.
Okay, around 11 for those Europeans that don't know what grade 5 is.
Yeah.
And Canada and US were the same. So, so around 11, you're starting to find things that really are interesting to you. And you hope that you have teachers that are encouraging. You certainly hope that you have parents that are encouraging. And so I was wondering, if when you felt so crushed by her saying, you know, not thinking you were a good artist and giving you that belief, were you able to go back and tell your parents, or did you just take it?
No, my dad thought like anything that wasn't related to getting a career, even at that age, was,
Yeah.
he thought artists were flakes.
Okay.
He thought psychologists were kooks.
Kook. And that's his official a kook. I love it.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. We all have stories, and this is what I love. You know, like
Yeah.
if you just passed either you or me in a coffee shop, you know, you wouldn't know that. You just have to know behind every single, you know, pair of eyes, there's this whole history, and your parents' history and your parents' parents' history. So I think that that's one of the keys that I want people to take away, whether they are parents, whether they are aunts, whether they are teachers, to see the child and to not make judgments about who they are or what they're interested in, which is very hard, certainly of our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation, certainly. So I'm hoping that we're more evolved now, that we can, hi, my oven guy's here. So, you know, even when you're doing a live show, you know, things are still going on. But even when our parents, you know, they couldn't see that. So I hope we're more evolved now.
Yeah.
That we can be aware of not over encouraging, but also not and being there for children. If you're there and they know that you're there, they're going to tell you, and you would have been, you know, you didn't have anyone to tell.
Well,
and I think that would have been you.
I think also, like I was, and I think kids today still are, because it's just part of being human, super sensitive to judgments. And those judgments don't even have to be put into words. They just need to be felt. Like kids do pick up energy, right? They pick up the energy. And, you know, I think like you haven't gone through the teenage years with your kids yet, but we do come at them with a lot of judgment, you know, when they start being grumpy and they start defying us. And, you know, again, the same thing, if we can just love them and say to ourselves, nothing's gone wrong here.
Yeah.
This is exactly where they're supposed to be right now. Like, I think if I'd known to say that throughout my own kids' childhood, right? That, you know what, each of my kids are exactly where they need to be, even when they were struggling, and understand that's all part of it. And even though they might be different than the phantom image I had in my mind, it's all okay. And just set the intention, you know, I just love them right now, exactly the way they are. Even if I don't like the behavior, I love them for who they are now.
And that is such a critical way to put it. And I want everybody to hear that is, I may not like the way you're behaving, but I still love you.
Yeah.
And that is really, really important. I think one of the things that is a challenge for parents as well is that we start judging ourselves in that moment. And so, like last night, my son was having a really hard night, and I immediately go to, well, if I had been better parent, he's only 7, but if I've already messed him up, and if I done this different yesterday or this different 3 years ago, or if I'd fed him more broccoli when he was 2, I don't know. But if I, you know, whatever it is, I have done something wrong that he is not going to bed right now.
Well, you know, I think we all have our journeys in life. And my belief is even the difficult stuff, even the challenges, they're all there for us. And when we have bad experiences and when our children have bad experiences, those are the areas where they grow. Those are the areas where they become better human beings as a result of that. If life was perfect for them, you know, they'd be like the trust fund babies who grow up and are like, I used to work as a tax lawyer and work with these really wealthy people. Those were the most messed up people I'd ever met, right? Because they weren't equipped with challenges or hurdles, and they didn't know how to overcome them when they did arise.
It's
so realizing, you know what, maybe my kid is supposed to struggle.
Ugh. it feels so horrible to even think of that. But then what are the
But
beliefs?
there's a relief to it too, though, because when you resist what's happening and you're trying to control it and change it,
Yeah,
we can't control the world.
I hear.
And when we feel like we have to keep our kids safe, it's really painful
Yeah.
to
By the
us
way,
as
I want to
parents.
make a quick caveat that I could completely agree with you about trust fund babies because I was a trust fund baby.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, and honestly, I'm going to come out and say I absolutely silver spoon trust fund baby, had everything that I wanted, and I have to say that that is not the best way to grow up. And I am super grateful that when the money ran out, when I had nothing, I became, in debt, and I was 30, and I was basically starting over my life going, wait a minute, this isn't what I'm prepared for. That's not what's the first 30 years have been. And the next 20 years have been all about the struggle and trying to overcome it and dig my way out and find the tools. And so if I can say, look, if you have a trust fund baby or you are a trust fund baby, that is not the gift to give to your child. Absolutely.
Right.
But
it's just also realizing, like, there are no perfect parents and you can't create perfect experiences. And it's looking to teach your kids to even be able to love your kids unconditionally. You have to start with yourself.
Yeah. Well, I
You
mean,
have to start with yourself. And
we've
so
got 24 minutes or 14 minutes for you to tell us, how do we love ourselves? Heather?
well, I mean, I wish I had I think that's a lifelong pursuit, right?
Right.
And
you won't figure it out until you're after 50, by the way. So all of you under 50, your prefrontal cortex has not been figured out, hasn't been completed yet.
But part of it is just like noticing, right? You notice, like, wow, I'm criticizing myself a lot for stuff that's in the past.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking of the conversation you were having in your head about your son last night, right? Like, have I messed him up already?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
that self-awareness, I keep saying change cannot happen until self-awareness begins. And I am a self-aware person and I'm still beating myself up.
Well, what I've noticed is that my kids pick up on me beating myself up. And that is the behavior they emulate. So I used to think that, because I had a daughter who had some real issues a couple of years ago, and I realized that one of the biggest issues for her with me was I beat myself up all the time. And then when she started struggling, I was beating myself up and trying to say, oh, it was my fault and I should have done this and I should have done that. And I thought it was just taking responsibility. But she just saw the example of me beating myself up. And then they learn that behavior, right?
Yeah. And were you able, and then, once there's awareness, are you able to switch it?
Well, I started practicing the thought. I got coached on it. I was training as a life coach, so it was good timing because somebody really brilliant was coaching me. And the thought that kind of saved me was, what if it's not my job to save my children, which is how I was viewing it. I have to save them. What if my only job is just to love them exactly the way they are right now, without changing? And then
that's such a good moment. Sorry, it's an aha moment, and I just need to make sure that everyone hears that. What if my only job is to love my child exactly how they are, exactly where they are right now?
Right.
Okay, sorry, keep going.
That changed everything for me. And then it was looking at my child who was suffering and in trouble every day and kind of going, what beautiful thing do I see in her? Or what nugget, what are the smallest things? Like, I started to retrain my brain to notice the things she was doing right, the areas where she was okay. And energetically, that changed things. It just changed things because I think she could feel that acceptance. So for example, I'd always been super against tattoos. And I'd said that she couldn't have a tattoo, right? And she began to get tattoos. And like I went out and got a tattoo just because I wanted to prove in my mind that I could shift my thinking and that I could actually learn from my child. Right?
Wow. And
So,
then, and so that's so amazing. What I love about that is that you had a belief about tattoos. Like, don't even
yeah,
know where that, I mean, and this sounds so silly, but honestly, this is a big one in my family right now too, with my sisters and their teenage daughters. And it's just a belief. You know, their belief is that what it says about you, what it will look like when you get older, like the image that other people will see you as. Isn't that interesting? And then how did your belief, how did you shift that enough that you would go get a tattoo?
well, I just decided to open myself to everything. And so we started talking about tattoos, and I listened to all her reasons why she loves them so much. Right?
You
And
heard her. You
also,
listened.
I'm an artist and I'm very visual, and I thought it would make a statement, like to myself, about how much I'm capable of shifting as a human being, and to her about how much I'm capable of shifting.
And how did
Because
she feel? What did she say when you got your tattoo? Did she go with you, or did you
no,
surprise her?
I didn't tell her about it. I
No?
sent her a photo from the tattoo shop.
Yeah.
I was getting it.
And what did she say?
She was, she doesn't think I'm very cool, but she forwarded the picture. She actually posted it on Facebook and said, coolest mother. Right?
Uh,
Yeah, I think it was a shift for her because it was such a dramatic thing. Because I brought my kids up saying you can do anything you want with your parents. It's the one thing you can never do ever, even when you're an adult, is get a tattoo.
isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I love it so much because I think it's also a really great awareness to say the person that you were 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 days ago is not the person you will be 5 days from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now. And we get stuck in this, just this belief of who we are, who we're supposed to be. And I keep saying, look, be super intentional about where you want to be 5 years from now and 10 years from now. Because so many people wake up and go, how did I get here? And I plan in 5 years to say, oh, I know exactly how I got here. I laid it out, and then I actually got surprised because that didn't happen, but this happened. But I was really intentional about the feelings I want and the people I want to be about, not the car I want or the shoes I want.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, because everything we do, we're trying to get a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And then you can start working on achieving those feelings. And I think you said something that it strikes me as really important, and that's to be fluid. Like we set our 5-year out intention and we start our path, but it's like I believe our best decisions come from our heart. And if we really, there's a lot of wisdom in our bodies. And if we really stay tuned to our bodies, we'll know what our inner child wants to do. If
So
I'd been attuned to my body, I would have known my inner child wanted to be an artist, right? I would never become
let's circle back because I gotta help them understand. So you got destroyed by this teacher, and then you put away all your art things.
Yeah.
You
And I
didn't do
just
more art.
followed everybody else's ideas and thoughts about what I should do. And, you know, even to the point where like I hated economics. I just loathed it, but people thought I was good in it. I became an economist and then I became a lawyer. Like I just followed all the prescriptions.
Lawyer, and it was never joyful. I
No.
mean, yeah.
Like, I mean, I made a lot of money and, you know, I had some nice things, but I felt this burning emptiness all the time, and the sadness increased. I got a bit diverted when my kids were young because I found that very joyful. But, you know, once they got older and had their own interests again, the sadness really reappeared again, because I was denying my fundamental nature. I was in a world where I was artificial all the time. had a public presence that was completely different from who I was. And I had even forgotten all of the art.
Oh,
Like
because I
I,
was
I
going to
didn't even
ask.
remember it. I didn't even remember any of it.
I was going to ask, like, was there this? Did you have this knowing of, you know, I should have been an artist. I wish I had done art. Like I
No,
miss.
no, I mean, I had totally repressed it. I had all the voices of my parents and everybody in my head. I didn't think there was any choice. All I knew was I felt totally empty. I felt sad. I cried a lot, and I spent most of my breaks in self-help bookstores trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
And
But
then when, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I had no idea.
And then when did the epiphany happen?
I was on a trip in Paris in February. It was winter. All of the museums were empty, and you could go into like the Rodin Museum and like just take in the sculpture, like just really feel the essence of it. And I don't know, I was just steeped in art every day. And one day I woke up and I had this really blissful vision of myself painting a canvas. And I was just like, I didn't even think I could imagine a painting, but I could see it in detail. And these visions appeared every day. Like I got up, I journaled them because I couldn't draw. So I journaled and I got up to 51. And it just led to, I started all of a sudden, I think basically the universe popped up. Like everything happened to suddenly make me not want to stay in my job and want to leave. And I met artists everywhere and I met people that supported me. And I left my job 8 months later to paint full time.
So
It
cool.
was it was kind of like somebody had opened the tap that
Yeah,
had been closed for so long.
and now you're super aware and you just get all these signs from the universe, and that was super brave to quit your job. And you know, it doesn't mean that as soon as you quit your job all of a sudden, you know, now you know everything falls into place either. I'm sure that.
No, it never does, right? But there's a difference when you're struggling doing something that you love.
Oh
Different
yeah.
feeling. It's a totally different feeling than struggling doing something you hate. Like I don't. Sometimes I feel challenged. I have my good moments. I have my fears and anxieties still. I have my joy other times, but I don't have that feeling of emptiness.
Mm.
That's what's really different.
There, I have to say, there's a really great commencement speech by Jim Carrey. Um,
Yes,
have you
I was,
seen that one?
I was listening to it this morning.
Oh my
Again,
gosh. See,
I listen to it often.
I love the universe. So for those of you that haven't seen it, he's talking about how his father was what he was an accountant, right?
Yes,
But he wanted to be a comedian. He wanted to
yes,
be an actor or something. And they struggled a lot, and then his father got fired. And so Jim Carrey said, you know, if you can fail at something you hate, why not fail at something you love instead
yes.
and enjoy it? Yeah. And
And
I
it's totally different, right? It's totally different. So I think that it's just kind of going back to the parenting, if you give the kids space to be who they are
Mhm.
and you accept that they're going to be different than your expectation,
Yeah.
but you allow them to be themselves, I think that's how you can have the closest relationship. And that's, I think, the biggest gift you can give them.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and to not judge yourself and to give them the space and be there. You know, and I think loving them doesn't mean just sit back and watch it and, you know, just hope for the best. I mean, I think that it's loving them, and I think loving them, the action of that is not being judgmental,
Yeah.
being there, listening, being present, you know, and hearing them,
Exactly.
again, without judgment. And you
Yeah, it
know,
doesn't mean that you agree with everything they say by any stretch,
yeah,
but
but
you're listening.
it isn't also about solving too, because last night as my son was falling asleep, I thought, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to cuddle with him and I'm going to tell him how much I love him. And I walked in and I said, can I lay down with you? And he said, no. And I said, okay. And of course I'm like, okay, you know, and that's when I started doing this whole, like, what have I done wrong? And then I just laid down on his bottom bunk. He was on the top. And I thought, I don't have to fix this for him. I don't have, as much as I want him to now hug me and say it's all okay, and I'm sorry, mommy, and I'm sorry I yelled at, I didn't need to fix it right in that moment. I just needed to let him decide and go through it and come out where and when he was going to come out of it.
And to me, that's an example of exactly beautiful parenting, right?
It wasn't easy. And then this morning he came out. I'm like, how are you doing? He's like, I'm doing great, mommy. And it isn't, I don't have to psychoanalyze everything in the morning and try and fix it so it doesn't happen again. So again, I'm on this journey. I do this Happy Huddle, and I do my Instagram, and I do my webpage so people can sort of follow along the journey of learning, of a learning conscious parent. And here we are at 9:30 already. I tell you, this is the fastest half an hour. I could go on for 2 hours, but I like to show people that you can get in, you can learn something, it can give you a little aha moment, you can get out and move on with your week, but it's the practice. It is the practice that makes us better. I don't even want to say it, and it is happier, but I would not say happy as in an end goal, because there is no, I will never have any feelings other than happiness, because I will tell you, there are only two people that don't have human feelings, and those are dead people and psychopaths. And you don't want to be either of those. So you know what? You just got to, psychopath, human, I don't know. So you're going to accept it, like you said, and move through it. Tell people.
I love the service you're providing your listeners.
Oh, thank you. Tell people where they can find you, Heather.
They can find me on www.gracedcanvas, graced with a D at the end, canvas.com.
RACED, graced
canvas.com. Or look at me up on Instagram at Graced Canvas Coaching.
Okay. And so you do coaching as well, which is really great. I really believe, coaching is a new kind of therapy. We were all in therapy when we were younger, but and I have nothing against therapy, but I think coaching is a lot more active and a lot more focused on what we're doing right now and what we can do coming up, as opposed to sort of just trudging through the past. So
I think if coaching is looking forward, and therapy, kind of figuring out why you are where you are at.
Yeah. So
useful in different circumstances.
Heather, thank you. I will see you again on our book tour somewhere or in the next book.
Awesome.
Are you doing the parenting book?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll get you. There'll be another book another time.
But I'll love to read it. Are you doing it?
I am. Yes. I'm still working on my Ignite moment. Don't tell them I haven't started writing my chapter yet, because it was due last week. But anyway, that's how we roll,
Okay. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, Heather, have a fabulous day. Thank you for sharing, and have a fabulous day. And bye, everybody. Thank you. Now this is where I go and end. Oh, my. Hold on a second. You don't know. They're not on my show. Why aren't they on my show? They go out on my live. Bye. And I go out here and I say, bye, everyone. See you later. Bye, Heather.